Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtatara Satashi Shrimati Divine Grace of Vaichanara Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan Ki Jai. Jai Nithai Gaur Premanande Hare Hare Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you for very enthusiastically participating in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. Before we get started, I've got a nice little message here on my phone asking if everyone could please keep their phones on silent. It's a reminder from me. So, okay, so we can ask everyone to kindly put all their phones on silent, vibrate. Funny thing is, if you put on vibrate and vibrates, then it makes more noise. So, thank you. Okay, so for the last couple of weeks, for a month and a half actually, we've been discussing about the qualities of Krishna. Now, these qualities of Krishna were actually very kindly given to us or explained to us by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in his book Chaitanya Charitamrita. Has everyone heard of Chaitanya Charitamrita before? Yes? How many have heard of Chaitanya Charitamrita? Please raise your hands. Okay, so, thank you. Okay, let's start from the basics. We have Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is also known as the Amala Purana, or the Purana that's spotless, pure, and that describes about Krishna's devotees and his interactions, and their interactions with Krishna. And it's what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has kindly recommended all devotees to read and relish, because it is something we read in our current beginning stages of devotional service and also in the final liberated stages of devotional service. It's for everyone. And it's known as the encyclopedia of the spiritual world. And why? Because it gives you knowledge of everything about the spiritual world, the material world, and also how to enter into the spiritual world. So, that's Srimad Bhagavatam. It talks about the glories of Krishna, his devotees, and about material and spiritual worlds. Now, Chaitanya Charitamrita is an extension of Srimad Bhagavatam in the sense that the compiler of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, his name is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. He's a disciple of Lord Nityananda, and we all know Lord Nityananda is an incarnation, or actually this the direct manifestation, or the personality of servitor Godhead Lord Balaram in his incarnation of Sri Nityananda Ram. And Nityananda Ram sent Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami to Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, Kaviraj Goswami, he associated with the other associates of Lord Chaitanya, namely the 6 Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, and Sri Jiva Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami. These 6 Goswamis were entrusted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to stay in Vrindavan and to perform their individual instructions, mainly to expand the glories of Sri Vrindavan Dham by extracting all of the hidden pastime places of Lord Krishna, and also expanding the glories of Lord Krishna by writing books, and also rewriting all of the texts that had disappeared or unmanifested. So they pretty much gave the whole world Sri Vrindavan Dham through their literature, and the glories of Lord Krishna and devotion to Lord Krishna by their literature. Now this Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was instructed specifically by Raghunath Das Goswami, who was able to associate with Lord Chaitanya in Puri, and he was given a lot of association of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than Radha Gopinath, Sri Radha Gopinath himself, and he had appeared 500 years ago simply to teach us how to become a devotee of himself. Because he had appeared 5,000 years ago on this earth to perform his pastimes, to attract all living entities, to again take up to spiritual life, take up to bhakti, and again engage in their eternal occupation. Because the nature of the living entity is that we have come to a place where we don't belong. We are by nature looking for happiness. We are by nature eternal living entities looking for happiness, and we are full of knowledge. But unfortunately we've come to a place where all these 3 things don't exist. It is devoid of knowledge of the absolute truth, something that's able to help us overcome birth, disease, old age, and death. It is near Ananda, it's not full of bliss as we all can experience. It always gives us a little taste and seems to take away everything else. And also there's no eternality here. Because what happens is that we're always besieged, or we're always frustrated by death. Just when we think, we were reading recently in our classes early in the morning at 7:45 a.m., we read from Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Srila Prabhupada has nicely explained to us there that the mentality is that, or the experience we have in this mature world is that I've built such a nice wonderful house, but unfortunately it has succumbed to fire. So we are endeavoring so hard in material existence to create something to enjoy, but we don't know when it will finish, but we know it will come to an end. And that's our life. Our biggest asset is our lifespan. So knowing this, Krishna came 5,000 years ago to help us understand that actually we are not the bodies. We are more than that. We are the spirit souls. We are part and parcel of Krishna. And this is just preliminary knowledge. After that we need to understand what is it that we are supposed to do. If we're not the body, if we're the spirit soul, how do we act like the spirit soul? What are we actually supposed to do? And then once knowing that, we need to know our origin as well. Okay, so for what purpose am I doing this activity, and why, and how will I get pleasure from it? So all of these things Krishna pretty much enunciated in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And that's the basic foundation of spiritual life. So after that, Krishna understood that at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, he asks everyone to surrender to him, to give up all types of religion, all speculated, all other types of religion, and just to surrender unto him, and to follow his instructions and attain a peaceful state of consciousness, and that way perform devotional service and go home back to Godhead. But unfortunately, the majority of us thought that who does Krishna think he is? And we have sort of misunderstood Krishna as just another ordinary living entity. So therefore Shri Krishna has understood that we need to learn by example. Although Krishna himself came and taught, he needs to teach us by example how to worship him. So therefore he came as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu associated with Raghunath Das Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis I mentioned before. And this Raghunath Das Goswami had written down all of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes on this globe. So the way it works is that whoever associated or was with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they had their own association with the Lord and they had their own pastimes to share with the world. But of the many devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there were two men that had written down in their notebooks, and that's Raghunath Das Goswami and Swarup Damodar Goswami. Swarup Damodar Goswami was another associate of Lord Chaitanya who was his personal secretary. He was with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu practically at all times. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, having this knowledge, wrote down Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the life teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's given in that particular book. Of course, there are many books of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, of his activities on this globe. But Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is considered to be the crest jewel, because it gives you the teachings of Lord Chaitanya along with his pastimes and pretty much his pastimes with his devotees. So in that we read of how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Sanatana Goswami, the senior-most of the 6 Goswamis. I trust everyone knows what Goswami means. Goswami means one who's controlled his senses, a saintly person. So Sanatana Goswami hears of the qualities of Lord Krishna, and that's what we've been hearing for the last 6 months. So much for an introduction for this class. So that's the origin of the 64 qualities we hear about of Lord Krishna. Now before we continue, we've gone through 57 of them, and we're hoping to finish the last couple today, or last several today. But before I start on the 58th, there's a section I was reading in this particular paragraph. This is from the Nectar of Devotion. It's a summary study of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu written by Rupa Goswami. This is also mirrors Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the sense that Chaitanya Charitamrita gives the essence and Rupa Goswami has now fleshed it out. What Rupa Goswami did was he got Chaitanya Charitamrita and he further elaborated on it by finding examples and what they known as pramana, or evidences of such teachings of Lord Chaitanya in all the Vedas. So this is a summary study Srila Prabhupada has kindly given us. The BBT Bhaktivedanta Book Trust is currently working on a massive, I think it was a 5-volume set of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu with the original translation and Sanskrit in it, with commentary as well. So that's coming out soon. But for now, we're reading from what Srila Prabhupada has given us. Prabhupada says that of these 64 qualities, we may get this sort of feeling that understanding of Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. Krishna is the origin of everything, from everything emanates from him, and there's no origin except him. So he's the cause of all causes. Now, when we somehow quantify something, we bring it within our understanding, if that makes sense, right? So Prabhupada gives this example a lot of times to help us understand that there are many things which are beyond our understanding. And he gives the example of Dr. Frog. Has everyone heard of Dr. Frog before? He's doing a big PhD in Sydney University. You may be able to go see him. Dr. Frog. So Dr. Frog, the story goes like this. There's a frog in the well, and he meets a friend who happened to come from the Pacific Ocean. And this particular friend that came from the ocean was speaking to the frog within the well and telling him that, you know, the Pacific Ocean, it was a magnificent place, fantastic place, it's huge. And the frog in the well was thinking, how huge? Is it as big as this well? He says, not quite, much bigger. Is it 2 times bigger than this? No, it's much bigger. Is it 3 times bigger than this? No, much bigger. And in the process, this frog lost its life. So it expanded. Is it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times? And it exploded. So this Dr. Frog philosophy is here to teach us that actually there are things that are beyond our conception. Like, for example, we do not know what exists within the depth of the ocean. Right here, right now, sitting here, we can all understand there is a limited perception of things we have. But what we do perceive, we are able to quantify. So put in simple terms, is that if it's something we can understand, then we can easily sort of calculate, count it, qualify it, come up with qualities and describe it. That's what I mean by quantifying, putting a number to something. So when we put sort of that sort of understanding or thought process or speculative process on Krishna, in one sense we're defeating the notion that Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unlimited, inconceivable, right? It sort of defeats the whole philosophy if we say Krishna has 64 transcendental qualities and that's it. So it defeats that whole understanding of Krishna as a Supreme Personality of Godhead. So before we go to the 58th and so on to the 64th, I wanted to read this section where Prabhupada mentions a very specific understanding of these 64 qualities. And if we understand these qualities from this sort of mindset, then it becomes very easy for us to be able to appreciate the qualities of Krishna. Because the main thing that's lacking in this world is understanding the personality behind God. Wherever you go, whomever you meet, you'll understand some way or other. Those who follow God in different traditions will explain God to a certain degree. But they won't explain who God is, where He is, what He does, and who His associates are. And it becomes very difficult for us to understand, then what's the purpose of practicing religion? Okay, I'm doing something for God, but who is God? Right? So understanding God is a very essential quality, understanding personality behind God. Because we are all persons, we're all individuals. And if the supreme sum total is not a person, it defeats the whole logic that we are persons as well. So personality, if it exists in our state, it also exists in the absolute state, the complete state. So Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is what Prabhupada says here about the qualities of Krishna and how we can understand and appreciate His qualities. Because if we're able to appreciate even simply one quality of Krishna, that is sufficient. Sufficient for us to develop a relationship and maintain a relationship with Krishna. It's just enough, because once you appreciate a certain quality of Krishna, then you can engage in a relationship with Krishna, and reciprocation comes from there. So this is what Prabhupada says. The above statements describe some of the wonderful reservoirs of pleasure within Krishna, as well as the transcendental qualities of His personality. The transcendental qualities of Krishna are compared to the ocean. No one can estimate the length and breadth of the ocean. So these qualities, they're compared to the ocean. But as one can understand the ocean's contents simply by testing one drop of it, so these statements will give us some understanding of Krishna's transcendental position and qualities. Here's another understanding. These 64 qualities are like categories of Krishna's personality. Krishna has so much more, but for whatever we can understand, we have been given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Like for example, we talk about how Krishna is all attractive. He's got 6 main things, 6 qualities that make Him all attractive. Can anyone tell me what these 6 qualities are? Yep. Strength, pronunciation, wisdom, knowledge, beauty, wealth, and fame. So one who possesses all these in full, he is the personality, Supreme Personality of Godhead. But we living entities being part and parcel. So in other words, we're like, the example given is Krishna's the ocean, and we're like a drop of water. We possess the same qualities as Krishna, but not to the same quantity. That's the difference here. So we're simultaneously same as Krishna, but not Krishna. Okay? So these 6, I guess, opulences of Krishna, you'll see that throughout society. And you appreciate it throughout society. When someone's very famous, people are naturally attracted to them. When someone's very beautiful, you're very attracted to them. You want to know what's going on in their lives. You check their Instagram profile, see what they're doing every single minute of the day, right? Yeah? Because that's attractive. You find some sort of pleasure in understanding a bit about what a famous person does in his or her life, right? So, in the same way, if you see, we're always looking for something to attract us. But unfortunately, we always come across limitation. We're always disappointed by something that's lacking in the other person, right? There's always a person that may have fame, beauty, knowledge, but they may not be so strong. And so on and so forth. You can go through all 6 of the opulences and come up with different combinations and permutations. But Krishna possesses all of them in full. Say by chance you meet someone who possesses all 6 of them, but they won't have it to the same degree and extent of Krishna. So this is the point that we're trying to understand here. So last week we had Sriman Nrsimha Prabhu talk a bit about how Krishna's body generates innumerable universes. These particular qualities of Krishna, that are mentioned here are also shared by his incarnations. So we're coming to a stage, 57, 58, 59, but 60, 61, 62, 61, 62, 63 and 64 are exclusively reserved for Krishna. So here we'll go with 58 now, the original source of incarnations. So Krishna, he appears in the material world simply to, again, re-emphasizing, Krishna appears in the world simply to save or protect his devotees, to annihilate or remove all miscreants or difficulties in the paths of the devotees, and also to establish Dharma, or one's eternal occupation. And when Krishna appears, that is called as an avatar. Avatar means to descend. It's not like how we take birth. It's not like how we leave a body and pick up another body. Krishna appears as he is in his original form. So when you have a look at Krishna's different incarnations, Prabhupada mentions here there are, for the this particular example, there are 10 incarnations. They're known as not Yuga avatars, but part of the Leela avatars, if I'm not wrong. He mentions the fish incarnation, Matsya, the boar incarnation, Varaha, the tortoise incarnation, Kurma, half man, half lion, Nrsimha, Vamana. Then we have Parashurama, Lord Rama, Balaram, Buddha, and Kalki. So these are the 10 incarnations known as the Dasavatar. And Krishna is the original source of them, because it is from Krishna that all these incarnations of Godhead expand. And just taking a step back, an incarnation, the basic understanding of an incarnation is, say I have many lamps or candles in this room, and they're all unlit, but I have one that's lit up, and I light all of the candles with that one candle. That's the same as Krishna expanding. All of these candles possess the same energy, the same potency, but the only difference is that the original candle was Krishna. So from Krishna all of these incarnations expand. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the core text known as the Paribhasha Sutra, the basic core essence, or the only text you just need to read to understand the essence of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Ete chamsa kalapumsa krishnastu bhagavan swayam indriyari vyakulam lokam mridyanti yuge yuge. So in this particular section of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's mentioned, this chapter is called, it's Canto 1, the chapter is called the Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And there it's given an extensive list of all different incarnations Krishna has taken up. And he comes down to the world as a particular incarnation to perform a particular role, and then to connect with his devotees. And then once he's finished that particular pastime, that activity, then he returns, or he becomes unmanifest and returns to his spiritual abode. So here, there's 10 given here, and here his name is Jayadev Goswami. This particular authority has written in his Gita Govinda, it's a very famous song known as the Dasavatara Stotra, or 10 verses glorifying the incarnations of the Lord. In these particular stanzas, it gives the incarnation of the Lord and his particular activity. And Prabhupada mentions here in detail each of these different activities, the pastimes each of these avatars have performed. But the point here is that they all emanate from Krishna. So they're like waves in the ocean. The amount of incarnations Krishna takes is like the amount of waves in the ocean. For one, you can't count the amount of waves in the ocean, and they keep coming and going. So the incarnations of Krishna are innumerable, but Krishna is the origin of them all. So this is the 58th transcendental quality of Lord Krishna, which means that you can understand the potency of Krishna. You can understand how great Krishna is simply by this quality. If you can just simply understand his incarnation. Okay, let's take it a step by step, okay? So Krishna, he expands himself many times to create this material world. And in this material world, there are 3 different types of incarnations he's taken to maintain it. And one of them is known as the super soul within the heart. And this super soul in the heart is seated along with us, next to him. So the soul is next to the super soul within the heart. But here's the difference. The super soul in my heart is the same super soul in your heart. but the soul in my body is not the same as your soul. So that super soul, that understanding can be again further understood through metaphors. Say you have many pots in this room, or rather not in this room, outside in the car park, and we have the moon out. And the moon is reflected in all of these different pots. In the same way, the super soul is one, but appears as many within everyone's body. So that's just one particular function of the super soul. That he's present in everyone's heart, witnessing our actions and sanctioning them, making sure whether we're qualified to have the reactions, so on and so forth. So this is just one particular quality of Krishna. Just by understanding this, you can appreciate how great Krishna is. Because that's just one incarnation. There's many more. There's one incarnation where he takes form as a fish and teaches the Vedas. Have you heard of Noah's Ark before? Yeah, the same principles there are given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay? Then you've got Krishna holding the whole universe on the back of his shell as a tortoise. Then you have him picking up the earthly planet from the water in the form of a boar. So all of these activities are meant to attract the living entities and at the same time show his qualities, show how magnificent he is. So this is number 58, the original source of all incarnations. 59 is that Krishna gives salvations to the enemies that he kills. So in this particular section, Prabhupada describes a bit about liberation and talks about the material conditions, but I'll come to that in a second. You see, in the material world, the thing that gives us great source of pleasure, or that will satisfy the burning heart, is the activities of Lord Krishna. Excuse me. So when we hear of Krishna's activities, that naturally will eradicate all these difficulties that are present within the heart. There are three types of difficulties. There's difficulties that have arisen due to the mind and body. There are difficulties that have arisen due to nature. And does anyone know what the third one is? So other living entities. Miseries that come up due to the interaction with other living entities. So we're going through these three things. So by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, reading Bhagavad Gita, the glories of Lord Krishna, it satiates or gives us a satiation, a sense of satisfaction. It pacifies the heart. So when we hear the qualities or the pastimes of Krishna, not only we understand about who Krishna is, but we also understand the activities Krishna is performing. And by hearing of those things, we can also enter into those pastimes. Okay, so when Krishna, it says here, Krishna gives salvation to the enemies that he kills. Remember, the second reason for which Krishna enters into the material world, can anyone remember? The first one is to protect his devotees, and the second is to annihilate the miscreants, or to remove all the negative obstacles in the path of devotional service. It may be in the form of subtle things within our consciousness, and it is majority of the time in other yugas due to other living entities who do not want to follow Krishna's instructions and cause difficulty for other living entities. But here's the thing. When we hear about this quality of Krishna, we doubt his character. Because God should be impartial. In other words, God should be equal to all, right? He shouldn't be swayed by good and evil. He shouldn't be swayed by these dualities, hot and cold. He should be, peaceful, self-sufficient, self-satisfied. In other words, he shouldn't meddle with our affairs, right? He should just stay in his abode and just watch and give us what we want so that we can enjoy life. And if and when someone disturbs that, yeah, he can get rid of them, but it's just, me and my enjoyment, right? That's the ideal conception or characteristic of God that we'd like to hear, yeah? But actually God is impartial. God is beyond all of our understandings of what is good and evil. In other words, he's not affected by these good and evil. He can perform whatever he likes and he's not affected by karma or the reactions to the actions. But we are. Right? For every action there's a reaction in this world. We may not perceive it now, we may perceive it in the future. Whatever we're experiencing now may have happened an hour ago, a minute ago, or it could happen many lifetimes ago. So karma is a very complicated thing, but it doesn't affect Krishna. So when Krishna performs these activities, he performs it to the welfare of all living entities. So when Krishna performs these activities, his whole goal is to give pleasure to the living entities to the extent that they give up the material world, give up material consciousness, and then again attain the spiritual consciousness, to always remember him and engage in his service. But here's the thing, there's always going to be difficulties and disturbances. So we hear in Krishna's pastimes that whenever a difficulty or disturbance came in the form of a particular wicked personality, a wizard, a demon, whatever it may be, Krishna disposed of them. But those who did die in his hands, they ended up getting a free ticket back to the spiritual world. Because they came in contact with Krishna, who is all pure, all good. Just by coming in contact with Krishna. So what to speak of those who favorably engage in his loving devotional service. So when you understand this, then you can, this is the 59th great quality of Krishna, that he gives salvation to the enemies that he kills. Now coming to this point, Prabhupada mentions here something maybe all of us can sort of relate to, is that another name for salvation is liberation. You've heard of this word liberation before, right? To liberate, to become free from. And what do we want to become free from? Suffering, bondage. Anything else? Sorry? Old age, yeah. Some of you may be thinking also, this class, when is it going to finish? Right? Don't worry, there's a long time to go. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So there's liberation, which means to get free from. And generally this idea of liberation means to get free from suffering, from misery. That's the general context it's come from. Or salvation means to be saved from something, right? So Prabhupada says the Sanskrit word for it's called Varga. Can you say it with me? Varga. Very good. Now this Varga has a hidden meaning behind it. And the reason why it's got a hidden meaning is it means salvation, but why does it mean salvation? Okay, we're going to go through a bit of a Sanskrit class today. Alright, we're going to learn a bit about a few of the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. So this Varga comes from this word or opposite of Varga. And Varga comes from the word Varga is a combination of 5 Sanskrit letters. Okay? And these Sanskrit letters are Pa, Fa, Bha, Bha and Ma. Okay? It's a bit difficult to understand just by hearing. You can read it in Nectar of Devotion later on. But here, these letters all signify something very important in our day-to-day lives. Because these 5 letters somehow or other describe the difficulties we experience in the material world. Right? Okay, so I'll begin with the first one. The first letter Pa comes from the word Parabhava in Sanskrit, which means defeat. I think every single one of us in this room has experienced a defeat, right? Yeah? Who hasn't experienced defeat here? Just curious. Mandragosh, you're exceptional. Anyone else? No? Okay, good. At least everyone else is real. Okay, good. So we have experienced some sort of defeat in life. That's a characteristic of material nature. And we all accept it, right? Can anyone remember what it felt like to be defeated for the first time? Can anyone guess what the first defeat of life is? To be unceremoniously pushed out of the womb. We begin to cry, right? That is the first defeat because we're done out of our own accord, without us wanting to do it. Right? So that's the first defeat of life, birth. But we generally don't think that way. Birth is such a glorious celebration, right? Yeah, so another way of looking at things. So then after that we've got another word. So defeat means that we're constantly trying for things, we're constantly struggling for things, but it never comes to fruition. It never comes to exist. And when it does, we're somewhat satisfied. And if you look in your life, our endeavors are very much, they're in one sense very large in quantity. But how many of those endeavors actually come out to fruition or to perfection or success? A few, a handful, sometimes a bit more. But then again, we always come across another difficulty, and that's the temporary nature. It always seems to come to an end. It always seems to be limited. And then we again endeavor. and we sometimes forget how long we've endeavored for it. And when we get it, it ends again. So the nature of material world is full of this hard, bitter struggle. In the end, we get defeated. And what is it that we have to defeat? Birth, death, disease, and old age. If you actually think about your life, what is the most, you can reflect, it's sort of a question you can all think about. What is it that we have difficulty with in life? What are the main problems we have in life? Right? What is it actually, what is, you know how they often ask, what's your problem? Yeah? What's your problem? So what exactly is our problem? What is it that's causing us a pinprick? It seems like everything seems to be going well, but there seems to be that small thorn in the side that always seems to prick us and give us a problem. What is that problem? Birth, death, disease, and old age. These four things, since time immemorial, until our current point in time, until the future, we will not be able to find a solution for these four things through material purpose, through material means. Extremely improbable. Why? Because how can we defeat birth? How can we defeat death? How can we defeat disease? And we're experiencing so much disease. And how can we, defeat old age? And what have we done to defeat these things? Individually, collectively, what have we done? We can reflect on these things. It's something for you to all think about. Everyone will have their own perceptions and opinions and things. But if it comes down to it, the question is, what have you done to defeat these four things? It is mentioned if you're able to overcome these material conditions, you're considered to be liberated. In other words, you'll be free from misery. So just keep that in mind. The next letters in this five-letter word of Varga, another one is Fa, P-H-A, Fa. Produces the word phena, which means foam, right? And it's mentioned due to hard labor, foam comes from the mouth. And we see that in animals sometime, right? If they work really hard, foam comes from the mouth. So in other words, it describes how we are just engaged in activities and causes so much tiredness. Another characteristic of this material world. Then again, we're going for the next one, ends Bha, which means Banda. Banda means bondage. So no matter how much we try, we're always conditioned. We're always habituated to a particular thing against our own free will. Right? Sometimes we have good habits, and majority of the time we have bad habits. Right? So that's another thing that ties us to this material world. And then we have Bha, B-H-A, which is taken from the word Bhiti, which means fearful. There's always something to fear in this material world. Then we have Ma, which means Mriti or death. Again, self-explanatory, another big, great obstacle. Prabhupada gives an example to this one as well. Once he said that he observed a man and he was passing away. He was a wealthy merchant and he was well off. And he was telling his doctors, please just give me a couple more days, weeks. I just need to finish off what I wanted to do before I leave. So death comes like that. It comes very swiftly and mercilessly, right? And I don't need to go into depths of this because it's a very difficult topic to digest. But this fifth word, Ma, comes from the word Mriti or death. And these things describe, these five words, Pa, Pa, Bha, Pa, and Ma, they describe the nature of the material world. Now, this is one aspect of the philosophy. Now the other aspect of this philosophy, this is the negative aspect in one sense, the understanding of the material world as it is, and what is the positive alternative? Because we just don't want to become really mindless zombies, completely dejected and negative and go around yelling at people like an old grouch. That's not what we want from understanding of this. What we want to understand from all of this is that Varga, to get out of all of these things, we engage in spiritual activities. We engage in our original occupation. Dharma, the word Dharma, does anyone know what the word Dharma means? I get a hand up first. Yes, right there in the back. Law and righteousness, okay, yes. Nature of the soul, okay. Duties, yes, that's the most common one. Anything else? Pious activities, dharma, okay. I'm looking for a specific word. Truth, okay. Occupation. Occupation. It is our natural occupation. Someone said something similar. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, so it's the nature of the self. Just like what is the natural nature, what's the nature or the occupation of sugar? Is sweetness. That is the dharma of sugar, to be sweet. If the object wasn't sweet but salty and white, we'd call it salt, not sugar. Make sense? So the object is qualified according to its characteristics, or named or identified based on its characteristics. And that's dharma. So the dharma of the soul, or the eternal occupation of the soul, is to always remain servant. Always to remain in a servitude position. And this is a hard pill to swallow. Because if you think about it throughout your whole life, you're always in the that particular, giving end of a relationship. Everything you do in life, you'll notice to be able to be in a relationship, to exist, you need to always be there to give something to someone. Take for example our jobs, right? We're in one sense serving the company, just so that we can get a bit of money, right? That's the transactional nature of the world in terms of one's business occupation. In a relationship, naturally we become, we compromise, we go with the partner's preferences, right? So naturally we come under their control to a certain extent, yeah? And those who don't have and say that, no, I have no one to be dependent on, they sometimes get animals. They get pet cat or a dog and serve the cat or a dog. And sometimes there are people who are even more lazier and don't do any of that and just say, it's just me. They end up serving their own senses. They end up serving their uncontrolled senses, right? So in any situation, when I mean uncontrolled senses, sometimes you get that urge within the core of the heart that do it. But I don't want to do it. Do it. Right? There's that urge, that monster in the heart that lurks and suddenly pops up and tells you to do something. And by the time you realize you've done it, and it's put you in a difficult position of life, right? So pretty much that monster, that lust, that urge in the heart, that's the mind. And that mind we have trained. We have unfortunately trained it for the wrong purpose, right? And that's causing us to perform activities against our will. So it's not, technically it comes up to us, it's up to us to be able to train the mind to stop that. But that's what uncontrolled senses means, okay? So that's the nature of the soul, to always be subservient, to always be a servant in a relationship. That then begs the question, so who is in the other end of this relationship? And that's Krishna. Liberation means to understand this point and to engage in the service of Krishna. That's real Dharma. So when Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Parityaja, give up all other varieties of religion and just surrender unto me, he's telling us to go back to our original nature, back to the original nature of the soul. Everything else that we perform in this world is just simply secondary. It's something we've picked up over many, many lifetimes. Sometimes like people have this habit of picking up books. When you go to someone's home and you see the bookcase will be full of books, or sometimes you go to someone's home and they're a collector and they've got so many things they've collected there, and it just seems to occupy space, and the person there thinks, sometimes even you think, I don't know why I got this one, or why I got that one, or why I got this one. Pretty much our whole lives are based like that. We pick up things as we go. We pick up different idiosyncrasies. We pick up different likes and dislikes. Sometimes we pick up a couple of people along the way, and we wonder why they're along here with me. So that's how life goes. We just somehow or other end up collecting. And by the time we realize it, as the soul, we enter the material world to enjoy, to exploit. And by the time we realize it, we've become conditioned or entangled by it. But then there's the flip side. Once you realize Krishna, once you understand Krishna, then you can engage in these activities. Like for example, there's the pastime of Krishna, where Krishna is in Dwarka. Or let's go to the most famous one, in Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra, the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the setting place of the Bhagavad Gita. There Krishna is performing his activities as the chariot driver of Arjuna. That one setting of the scene is enough. Because if you think about it, how is it the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes subservient to someone else? Because if you're a chariot driver, it means that you're taking instructions from the passenger, right? And if you're such a great person, how can you come down to that platform? Yeah? So this is what we call as the pastimes of Krishna, where even God himself prefers to come under the control of his devotees. Why? Because there's a loving reciprocation between them. And that's what the heart really yearns for. So this idea of Krishna giving salvation to the enemies, that's just a preliminary thing. Just wanting freedom from miseries, yeah, okay, that's fine, but what after that? What are you going to do after that, right? Like I remember once a very famous religious person, he was telling, he's a great preacher, philanthropist, and someone asked him, so when you go to heaven, what are you going to do? And he told the reporter, you know, when I go to heaven, I'm going to drive around in my Cadillac. I'm going to drive around in my car. So that's the conception people have. If you want to go to heaven to drive your car, you can just drive your car here. What's the point of struggling so hard to go to heaven, right? No, the point is to understand more. What are you going to do on the other side? Yeah? So some things to think about. But here the focus we're talking about here is Krishna gives salvation to the enemies that he kills. Number 60, he's the attractor of liberated souls. So there are many great persons who are saintly by nature. And they've dedicated their lives to give up all material activities and engage fully in spiritual activities. And such persons have by nature renounced the world. You know what it means to renounce, right? To give up. Kind of like, give up and go to the forest sort of thing. Just stop, drop and roll. Just let it go and move on. Yeah? So the nature of these saintly persons is that they've studied the nature of the world. They understand the nature of the world is of entanglement and they give it up. But even they're attracted to Krishna. So you can understand the attractiveness of Krishna. Number 61, the performer of wonderful activities. So when you think about Krishna, you can only help but think about one thing. That is all play and no work. There's a very famous or a well-known story of a German philosopher who happened to visit India. And when he traveled throughout India, he was trying to find out of these understandings of different Hindus of their worshipable deity, who's the topmost. So he went around and had a look. And finally he came to his decision. Someone asked him, so what was your conclusion? And he told them that Krishna must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he asked, so what made you come to that sort of conclusion? And he said, just look, he's playing on his flute. Everyone else has to do something. But he's just simply all play and no work. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full of such wonderful activities. Although he's standing there playing his flute, from him emanates the whole three worlds or the universe. From him, everything, proceeds. Everything happens just simply by him playing on his flute. So he is Atmarama, which means he's self-satisfied, and Aptakama, he can satisfy all of his desires. Just simply by desiring it, he can fulfill it. But he likes to enjoy as well with his devotees. So he's a performer of wonderful activities in that way. Now Krishna is also surrounded by loving devotees. This 61, 62, 63 and 64, these are qualities that are only possessed by Krishna. And those who are well versed in understanding the other avatars of Krishna like Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha and all the others will understand they don't possess any of these qualities that we're discussing right now. Krishna is surrounded by loving devotees. Now Krishna surrounded by his loving devotees is a very critical or a crucial point to understand, because by understanding the nature of God, by understanding the nature of the self, we need to know what activities we're going to perform. And the activities we perform are in relationship with Krishna, with God. And we understand the nature of the activities of the devotees with Krishna is always of a loving nature. Something we seek in this material world that is not there. that constant reciprocation is always present with Krishna and his devotees. And that's what's very attractive. Krishna's attractive flute, enough said. When Krishna plays the flute, it's mentioned the whole three universes come to a standstill. Those non-movable objects become moving again. Like the trees, the sap begins flowing from the trees. The birds, they become still and hear Krishna's flute. Even the great personalities like Brahma, Shiva, demigods and saintly persons immediately bow down to this sound vibration, not knowing the extent of the glories of this sound vibration. 64, Krishna's exquisite beauty. So, Krishna, when he appeared in this world, it's mentioned here. I'll read this actually. Prabhupada has very clearly summarized it here. In the 3rd canto, 2nd chapter, verse 12 of Srimad Bhagavatam, again, Rupa Goswami, this is Prabhupada quoting Rupa Goswami, and Rupa Goswami is just giving you an evidence of Krishna's exquisite beauty. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Uddhava tells Vidura, "My dear sir, Krishna's form was most wonderful when he appeared on this planet and exhibited the potency of his internal energy. His wonderful attractive form was present during his pastimes on this planet, and by his internal potency he exhibited his opulences, which are striking to everyone. His personal beauty was so great that there was no necessity for his wearing ornaments on his body. In fact, instead of the ornaments beautifying Krishna, Krishna's beauty enhanced the ornaments." So this is the nature of Krishna's beauty. In fact, Krishna is extremely so attractive, and these 64 qualities are present within him in full, to the extent that he's still glorified to this date for all of his activities. So these are the 64 qualities of Krishna. And again, I want to read this section just so we can understand in context. The above statements describe some of the wonderful reservoirs of pleasure within Krishna, as well as the transcendental qualities of his personality. The transcendental qualities of Krishna are compared to the ocean. And does anyone remember why it's compared to the ocean? Take a guess. Innumerable? Okay, why is it in relation to the ocean innumerable? Can't estimate. Yeah, that's the point. Just as there's waves in the ocean that we find extremely difficult to count, similarly Krishna's incarnations are innumerable. And in this example, one cannot estimate the length and breadth of the ocean. But as one can understand the ocean's contents simply by testing one drop of it, so these statements will give us some understanding of Krishna's transcendental position and qualities. So earlier in the class I was mentioning how these 64 qualities are present in Krishna. Our understanding of these 64 qualities are limited. We can never know Krishna in full, but we can know Krishna to our best capacity. By knowing Krishna to our best capacity and engaging in a relationship with Krishna, that will give us satisfaction. Because each of us are individuals. Each one of us have a varying capacity of understanding Krishna. But coming to that capacity of knowing Krishna, we need to understand there's always more to be known about Krishna. So Krishna then gives us more ability to understand him, and more and more and more, because Krishna is ever expanding. His glories continue to increase. So I hope just by going through these qualities of Krishna, you're all able to understand a bit more and appreciate more about Krishna, because Krishna is a supreme lovable object. The whole nature of Bhakti Yoga is that whatever we want to do in life, if we just simply engage in Krishna's service, is like turning that one light switch that will brighten our whole life. Everything we do in life is like a zero. No matter what we do and how many zeros we get, will stay the same, zero. But if we add Krishna to our life, he is the one in front of those many zeros. He gives value to our life, because that is the original nature or the Dharma of the living entity, to engage in his service. That's what will give us satisfaction. And to be able to go deeper and deeper and to help us understand more about Krishna and engage in his service, we need to know about his qualities and his pastimes. So this is the 64 qualities of Krishna. If you continue reading Nectar of Devotion, you'll understand Krishna's personality, and so on and so forth. So it's 6:05. I just got a couple of announcements to give. Okay. Alright, so we have a sponsor among us for the Sunday feast. His name is Sandip Varma Prabhu. He sponsored this feast for his late mother's birthday. His mother's name is Sudarshan Verma. So we'll just get everyone to please chant Hare Krishna 3 times for Sudarshan Verma. Okay? So together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So is Sandip Verma Prabhu here? Yes, Prabhu. Can you come forward? I'll give you the gift bag. Okay. Also, another quick announcement. Just excuse me. I'll take a seat. We're having on the 25th of June, we're having a very special festival known as the Jagannath Nanyatra. Has everyone heard of the Nanyatra before? Yes. Oh, very good. Enthusiastic. Jai. Who hasn't heard of Nanyatra? Please raise your hands. Okay, good. Nanyatra is the divine bathing festival of Shri Shri Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra. It's mentioned in Kali Yuga, this particular day and age, Krishna has appeared for us to again further connect with him in 2 forms. One is known as the Ganges, Mother Ganges, and the second is Lord Jagannath. So if you look on the altar to your right, yes, rightmost altar, you see Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra. Jagannath is Lord Krishna, Baladev is his brother, Balaram, and Subhadra is their little sister. So these 3 are the personalities that preside in Dwarka. And we worship them on this particular day, Snanyatra, by bathing them. So if you come on the 25th of June, we'll have an Abhishek at 7:30. So you can come and see this bathing festival of Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra. Now in the festivals we have in our temple throughout the year, you will see for twice in a year, on the leftmost altar, Shri Gauranitai, they'll be bathed. Right? And Radha Gopinath in the center, most of the festivals they get bathed. But only once a year do you see Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra bathed or go through the Abhishek ceremony. So it's a very rare annual event. It's something you shouldn't miss, because if you miss it, you have to wait till next year. And we're usually very impatient for that anyway. So please do come, 25th of June. Now the schedule is that at 7:45 we have a class on Lord Jagannath. That's 7:45 a.m. Now in the evening, 5:30 p.m. we have a kirtan, 7 p.m. Gora Arti, 7:30 Abhishek and kirtan, and at 9:15 is a special darshan of Lord Jagannath, where they'll be wearing a hati vesh or an elephant costume and a Maha Arti, and the feast will be served from 5 p.m. onwards. There's also opportunities to sponsor during this Jagannath Nanyatra, an opportunity to be recognized by Lord Jagannath himself. There are a few items here. There's a prasadam feast, Abhishek altar flowers, Didi garlands, Abhishek fruits, Didi Arti offering, Didi Bhoga offering, festival cakes as well. So if you just go out to the front, you can talk to the person at the tables there. Otherwise, out the front on our kiosk, you can have a look at the poster there for more details. In fact, I think it's posted all over the temple as you walk out. You can have a look at what you'd like to sponsor. Each of these items will be used during the day. Like you see, Gopinath, they're wearing garlands, so you can either sponsor for them to wear garlands on that day, and Gopinath will remember you for that. Otherwise, you can sponsor all the other items and you'll also be remembered. Some of these items, if you want to be remembered by everyone, you know which ones to sponsor for. Enough said. Okay, so I'll end here. Thank you very much for listening. And that ends our series of discussion on the 64 qualities of Lord Krishna. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Also, just letting you know, the feast is being served outside, and we're having another class here by Jagannath Prabhu on deity worship. So please stay, and there'll be enough prasad for you outside. Don't worry. Hare Krishna.
Temple. We'll be having a short talk on deity worship followed by 7 o'clock Aarti. So if you have time, which most of us don't, then you can sit down and we shall discuss a little bit about Sri Sri Radha Gopinath. We'll start by doing a nice prayer called Jayara Madhava. The idea of doing this prayer is to set a mood of Vrindavan. Jai. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari 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 Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jai Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jayam Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanyam Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Gurudev, Gurudev, Gurudev Jai, Gurudev Jaya, Gurudev Jai, Gurudev, Gurudev, Srila Gurudev. Jai Om Vishnu Bhat, Paramhams Parivajak. Ashruta Sar Srimad Srila Abhay Chanavin, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Hi. So just wanted to check, anyone here for the first time to the Radha Gopinath temple? No? Good. We have a usual crowd. Usual suspects. In this case, usual devotees. So welcome to Sri Sri Radha Gopinath temple. Sunday feast on this wonderful Ekadashi. I hope you're all keeping well with your Ekadashi. There's a good feast outside. So you'll be enjoying. I had pizza. I had quinoa salad. Paneer kofta. It's Ekadashi, but you get to feast a lot. Usually, I don't know how many of you notice that in Ekadashi we tend to eat more. But anyway, it's nice. In Ekadashis, we just refrain from grains and beans. So if you ever get an opportunity, it comes once in 14 days on the 11th day of the waning or waxing of the moon. That's why Ekadashi, the 11th day. Right? And this is said on this day, it is good to detox your body. Right? Nowadays, people are paying a lot of money for detoxification. So this is Vedic detoxification. On this day, it is said, don't eat grains and beans because they are very heavy on the body. So avoid them. So today is one of those wonderful days. And also, this entire year is the 50th anniversary of Sri Sri Radha Gopinath. Sri Sri Radha Gopinath ki jai. So 50th. Right? So Prabhu was saying that today there will be a discussion on deity worship. And I said, yes, that's an apt conversation to have on the 50th anniversary. So this entire year will be phenomenal. It will be the 50th Janmashtami. It will be the 50th everything. 50th Snan Yatra. 50th everything. Right? So everything is 50 this time. So, this is going to be a bonanza year. So if Prabhu was saying, talk a little bit about deity worship. Of course, I'm not a Brahmana, so I must start with that. So I'm not a Brahmana. So actually, I'm not qualified to speak. So we must first state that. I'm not qualified to speak. So I told Prabhu, I said, Prabhu, I'm not a Brahmana. So should I speak on deity worship? He was saying, you can just speak on what Srila Prabhupada says, that is written, and why we do deity worship. So I found that that's an interesting topic. How many here have, in passing by, or every now and then felt that this deity worship feels a bit iffy, feels a bit emotional. Why are you looking at a deity and worshipping? Why? It feels a bit awkward, doesn't it? In fact, if you go to other religious schools of thought, they actually take out the need of having deities. Even within Hinduism, there will be a certain sect of Brahmavad philosophy or Mayavad philosophy who take deity worship as a stepping ladder to eventually merging to the Brahman. So there are different people who have different views on deity worship. You may meet some Christians or you may meet some Muslims and they'll say, hey, you're worshipping a deity. Oh, haram, it's haram. It's terrible. How can you do such an awful thing? Right? So there are people with these various thoughts. You meet somebody who's a Buddhist, they'll say, well, why do you need to worship a deity? So you have these different moods, different moods. And every now and then you may be sitting and thinking, as you're looking at the altar, why am I worshipping? Why? Why am I doing it? So it's a good question to actually ask. Why do deity worship? For what reason? Right? So usually we get school kids who come to the temple. So I ask all of them, like, do you all have Instagram? Do you all have Facebook? Do you all have Twitter? Everyone says, yeah. Okay, good. Do you have picture of your friends? They said, yes. Do you have your own pictures? Nowadays people have more of their own pictures than their friends' pictures. I don't know, before, before, when I'm saying before, I'm just talking 10 years back, when smartphones just came out, you tended to have pictures of, the scenery, of, your friends, of moments. But now if I look at my, I'm an old man, right? White hair's coming out, one leg is in the deathbed. And I have more selfies of my own than I do of my friends. So the idea being, why do you do it? Why do you take so many of your own pictures? Why do you do it? Even the Muslims, even the Christians, even the Buddhists. I'm going for Hajj. Going to the church. Going for meditation, 7-day meditation, silent meditation. Every 7 days of the silent meditation, they're sending a picture. Today, this is how I did silent meditation. Right? So everyone is sending pictures out. The question is why? Why are we doing it? Any ever wondered why do we do it? In fact, if you go to if you go to Facebook, Twitter, and if you go to all these social media sites, they have dedicated schools, right? Dedicated departments that work on sending pictures to you that will entice you to press. Press. So when you look at deity worship, you can maybe first think about that urge, the urge to click. In one sense, you could say, is Krishna phishing us? You get phishing emails, right? I'm your Nigerian prince. I need to transfer $100,000. You have found you. Phishing mails, right? You click immediately. The URL, click. So in one sense, you can look at deity worship as being that. It is that urge to press and say, what is this? Right? And so, to understand why we do this, we have to come to some key principles of who we are. To understand why we are doing this, we first have to understand who we are. So that is why whenever you read any Vaishnava book, or whenever you read any Vedas, the very first Vedanta sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Know who you are. Understand who you are. Right? It's one of the first Vedanta sutras. I'm in UNSW and I was asking people, what is Hinduism? Right? This is a age-old debate, and people are like, oh, Hinduism is a word. Sindhu became Hindu. I'm like, yeah, okay. Save me all the historical babble. What is Hinduism? People struggle, right? Vedanta Sutra is Hinduism. You want to know what Hinduism is? Vedanta Sutra is Hinduism.
It's a way of life.
It's a way of life, yes, you can say that. It is life, is how Vedanta Sutra presents it. It is not a way, it is life. So that is what it is. Right? So this appreciation we first have to get from Vedanta Sutra. Right? What is Hinduism? What is it? And so the very first sutra says, who am I? Why? Once I know who I am, I will know why I do everything. There's a very famous story Srila Prabhupada says. It's a very, very beautiful story. Srila Prabhupada says, and it's funny. And of course, Srila Prabhupada, he had an amazing mood when he would say the story. I don't have that, but I will at least explain the story because it's very, it is something that will touch us in our heart. Srila Prabhupada is saying one time, a mother and father were worried about the marriage of their daughter. And they was very worried, we had to get our daughter married. Finally, they found a suitable boy. They said, yes, this is a very good marriage. Family is very nice. Boy is very nice. Girl and boy like each other. Let's get married. So marriage is done, and is who I. And the mother, she is very anxious. She's my only daughter. I have to get married. It should be very beautiful. She a lot of anxiety, a lot of anxiousness. All right, is there. And so she makes sure that everything is done wonderfully. Like she's like the perfect wedding planner. She's got everything down to the wire. And then it is explained that that moment comes, that critical moment comes in the yajna when, the marriage has to be sanctified by, the demigods and the gods. And that's why you'll see whenever in marriage they ask all the demigods and the various gods from all the directions to sanctify the marriage. Right? So as this is happening, a black cat comes there. So when the black cat comes, the mother thinks, oh no, a black cat, inauspicious. So she's thinking what to do. So she finds a basket. She takes the basket and she covers the cat. So at least the cat won't enter the yagya kunda, where the marriage is taking place. And then somehow she saves the day, and the mother is greatly relieved. Then of course the time comes for the bride to leave the home, and great emotion of crying and everything, and a lot of emotion. And the mother is saying, see, I did my best in the marriage, I tried to protect everything, I'm sure this marriage will go very nicely. And life goes on. Now this young girl, she now becomes a mother. She has a daughter. And then chance happens that her daughter's time of marriage comes. And at that crucial moment, when all the demigods are witnessed and everything is about to happen, she screams, no Pandit, wait. He's like, what happened? One more thing has to be done. He says, what? She finds a black cat. She finds a basket, puts the basket in the black cat and says, now you can do. Now the auspiciousness has come. And so Srila Prabhupada says this story to say, sometimes we do rituals, we have no idea why we are doing it. My mom got the black cat, put the basket on top. So this is our culture. It's our culture. We gotta find black cats. You can open a online thing. Black cats for rent. You can make a lot of money for this. So Srila Prabhupada tells this story to say that this is sometimes how we live life. So the reason Vedanta Sutra first begins with who am I is to say once we know who we are, we can understand why we are doing what we are doing. Why are we engaging in this wonderful deity worship? For what reason? Right? So the first thing is understood that I am dependent. Right? I was in university and I was talking to an atheist. He was from the atheist school and we were having an interfaith conversation. And so he was saying that, everyone is free. Everyone is free. And so he was presenting his idea that therefore we don't need God, we don't need this and that was his presentation. And my turn came just after his. So I showed the very first picture, and I showed a picture of a small, zygote. You know what a zygote is? A small little baby in the womb. Small. And then I'm showing, so this is week 6, week 10. Then I had some pictures and I showed, week 20, week 30, week 40. And you can see the baby is forming. The umbilical cord is, touching. And you can see this baby is growing. And then I looked at that person and I said, you are free? What made you realize this, that you are free? We have been dependent since before we came out of the womb. How many of you are sitting in this room right now with great panache saying, heart, beat. By my order, beat. The beat. Yes, I am ordering. Blood flow. Blood flow. Flow at the right pace. No high blood pressures. No low blood pressure. At the right pace, at the right pressure. How many of you are sitting with that great penance? No. It is just happening. And many times, when it doesn't work properly, you're in the hospital. Right? But still we are thinking, no, I am controller. We are not controllers. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a very beautiful shloka told by King Pururava. This is called, Aila Gita. He's also called King Aila, so it's Aila Gita. And there he says something very wonderful. He says, who is the master of this body? It's a very intriguing question. Who is the master of this body? Who? Me? Am I the master? That is his first question. His second question, or is it the parents who gave birth? Because, nowadays and even in general, if parents want, they can abort the child. But we don't want it. We don't want the child. I have decided, I'm going to abort. Right? You can. It's your choice. Right? It is your choice. So, he was asking, so who actually owns the body? Is it the parents? Because they have that right to do it. They have the right to make that choice. Right? Is it their choice? Are they the owners of the body? Or, and it's very, very beautifully how he tells in the shloka, is it the employer who's telling you, all right, you now are going to stand there. So, who's the master of the body? Yes, sir. There? Here? Okay. Right here? This way I have to look? Okay. Who's the owner of this body? You or the employer? And then finally he says, or is it the man who claims the body once you are dead? And this is a process even today. When someone dies, you have to go and claim the body. You have to go, I'll take it, my body. It's not yours. It was somebody else's. But now you are claiming my body. And this is very amazing, this shloka by Aila, by King Pururava. And he's in a very emotional state, and when he's saying this, he's saying, who is the owner of this body? And so that is why Vedanta Sutra begins with this first line. And it's a very powerful line. Who is the owner of the body? There is a very famous scientist who won a Nobel Prize, and she's done a study on viruses and bacteria. And she came up with this detailed study that viruses also talk to each other. They can talk within species and intra-species. So virus ABC can talk to virus, PQR. They can talk to each other. And so there's a very beautiful TED talk that she's giving. And so she's explaining, why viruses communicate. So when viruses hit a particular volume, 70% of your body, they know we can now overtake this body. We, the virus, can overtake this body. They send signals, everything attacks at the same time. She's a very famous virologist, Nobel Prize winner. And so she's explaining this, that they talk to each other, the viruses. They communicate with each other. And so why is this important? Is to explain that this idea of who am I, even from a scientific stance, they have come to the conclusion that it's not actually you. You are not the body. So even from a basic, from study of viruses and bacteria, you have come to this basic conclusion. You are not the body. So who are you? Right? And so in this process, the first, when we come out of this idea of I am not the body, then when we try to find the next thing of what I am, we have to start realizing our dependence. We are actually dependent on everything. Alright? All of us are, I am sitting on this big, bulky chair, I must be important. You are just sitting in this, small carpets. You guys are not important. No. I'm important. I'm sitting in this big chair and you guys are sitting in these small mats. But then all of us are sitting on this floor. And if this floor shakes, what happens? All of us. It doesn't matter where you're sitting. You're in an airplane. I'm in first class. Or I'm in economy. Cattle class, as they call, right? Cattle class, economy class. First class or economy class. When the plane shakes, it shakes for everyone. Shakes for everyone. And so the idea being, whatever your position is, we are dependent. And so having come to this first conclusion of I am dependent, right? The journey of Vedic knowledge begins. If I am dependent, what am I dependent on? Am I dependent on the ground? So many people start playing Mother Earth. Right? In your schools, you would remember, you would do the Karage Vastu, you would do, prayers to Mother Earth, before you put your foot on Mother Earth. In many even Buddhist, and Vedic schools, they do these prayers just before they put their foot on earth. So is this what I'm dependent on? One time, Srila Prabhupada was asked a question by a journalist. He says, so you believe that Lord Ram threw a stone in the water and it was floating. You believe that? You believe that? He's asking Srila Prabhupada. You believe that nonsense? You believe that nonsense? Srila Prabhupada is, you believe that this big earth is hanging in midair. You believe that? You believe that? What a way to answer a question. Anyone here doubt the fact that the earth is just dangling in midair? No, right? Anyone got a problem with that? No. And Srila Prabhupada looks at the journalist, and then why can't Krishna just float one stone in water? What's the big deal? This entire earth can float. Why this earth? Jupiter, 100 times bigger than earth. It can float in air. No one is questioning. That is science. It's science. Floating on what? Floating on what? If I just pick this mic up, take it out of the stand, just drop it, fall straight down. So what is holding? What is holding this? In science, this is called this, space-time mesh. Anyway, we won't go into science, that's a different thing. But the idea being, if Srila Prabhupada, if you can believe in that, then you can believe in the stone floating on water. Now, why do I bring this point? Because even if we believe that no, earth takes care of me, what is holding the earth? What's holding it? One big demon by the name Hiranyaksh, he comes. He says, hey earth, you acting smart. Pushes the earth out of orbit. Earth falls straight down. Trahimam. And so the idea being that when, this is called Sankhya. Sankhya means to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. So as you are looking at dependence, okay, I don't depend on earth, I depend on water. Or then I depend on air. Oh no, I depend on sky. Oh, I depend on space. You go through all the Pancha Mahabhutas. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, space. Finally, you will come to the conclusion that I'm not dependent on any of these. I'm finally dependent on Krishna. So from Brahman realization, we come to Paramatma realization. From Paramatma realization, we come to Bhagavan realization. And having come to this conclusion that I depend on Krishna. Now you have come to a conclusion. I depend on Krishna. Great conclusion. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? I met a Muslim, he had come to the university and I had asked the question to him. So he was telling me, he says, we all believe in one God. I said, great. I said, that's an amazing thing. We all believe in one God. That is an amazing statement. So what you're doing about it? I said, what are you going to do once you meet God? What are you going to do? Imagine, for a moment, all of us die. And we reach heaven. Congratulations. We all shake each other's hand. We made it. We did it. Whew, it was a near call. I was almost going to hell, but I made it in heaven. Yeah, everyone claps, big party. Now what are you going to do? So now you're here. Now what? No idea? No idea what you're going to do. And so the amazing thing is, in every religious book, they talk about the concept that the soul is eternal. Everyone believes soul is eternal. Nobody knows what to do when they reach eternality. Nobody. You may be thinking, I'm very good at meditation. I'm like, congratulations. Your meditation has fructified. You have reached where you had to reach. What are you going to do now? What are you doing? So this point, no one thinks. Because this material world is so engaging, we don't care about what happens after this material world. But Vedic philosophy says that you are living this material world for a small amount of time, 100 years, 200 years, God knows how long each of us will live. But for whatever time period you live, for that little time you're living, once that is finished, in eternality, you now have to deal with Krishna. Are you understanding? What do you do when you reach eternality? That is the process of bhakti. Right? No one else can describe this to you, believe it or not. You talk to anybody from any school of thought, I have reached eternality. And now what? Just I'll be there. Yeah, what? So you're going to stand like this for the rest of your life? Just floating in midair. Michelin man. Just floating here. What are you doing? What are you going to do for the rest of eternality? No one can answer this question. Barring the process of bhakti yoga. Says, yes, good. Congratulations. You've understood that you are not the body. You've understood that you are dependent. Now you have met the most independent person, Krishna. Now you must start engaging in bhakti. So the beginning process of that engagement of bhakti is deity worship. Why are we doing deity worship? What's the process? What's the requirement? Because once you have become eternal, this is what you have to do. Now, first question, usually anybody from any religious school will say, hey, Krishna looks like a man. Why does Krishna look like a man? He says, no. In Bible also it is said, man was built in the image of God. This is said in Bible. In Christianity this is said. It's Judeo-Christian religion. So both Jews, the Muslims and the Christians believe in this point. That yes, man was built in the image of God. So I said, no. Krishna doesn't look like you. You look like Krishna. Please understand what's going on here. Can we understand this first basic principle? You look like Krishna. Krishna doesn't look like you. He is the original. We are the pirated versions. Right? We are the made in Taiwan. Stickers. Right? That's us. We are the pirated versions. So he is the original. Right? And if he is the original, then everything we are doing originally has come from him. You like to dress up when you go out? Krishna likes to dress up when he goes out. Right? You like to look nice, blingy. Blingy. It's coming back in fashion. The boys, boys are also now wearing earrings. Right? Chains. I don't know if you've seen all the rappers. Have you seen all the rappers? Rings in every hand. The dollar signs. Chain. Carrying their chain, showing it. Look in there. The original rapper. He said 700 shlokas, rapped it all out in Bhagavad Gita. He's the original rapper. Deino asminyata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara. So he is the original. He is the original G, the OG. The OG. He is the one. And so when we do deity worship, is to remember the original position. Krishna is the original. He likes to dress, so we like to dress. He likes to eat, so we like to eat. Are you understanding why we eat? Not because, you feed God? You feed God? God needs to eat. He likes to eat. He doesn't need to eat. He likes to eat. But we need to eat. There's a difference. Right? Some of you like ice cream. I love ice cream. I love my sundaes. How many scoops? 2 scoops? 3 scoops? 4? 5? 6? After 6 you're like, enough. Man. I'm not going to eat this for another week. That's why they call it a Sunday. We do it once a week. Right? How much can you eat? Krishna? Ani more. Ani more. Bring more. Bring more. How much can you feed Krishna? That's the question. And so this idea of understanding what deity worship is all about is to remember this eternal position. Devotees here in this 50th anniversary, I hope you all got a chance to see the pictures of Radha Gopinath in the 50th. If not, if you go to the website iskon.com.au, or if you go to the YouTube channels or Facebook, they have all this social media outreach. You just see the dressing that they have done of Radha Gopinath. Exquisite. Like royal. And that is beautiful. Right? So this original fashion to dress nicely comes from Krishna. We are just copying. Original eating comes from Krishna. We are just copying. The original idea that when someone comes, you should receive them very nicely comes from Krishna. This original idea comes from Krishna. And so what happens is, when we understand that this is all originally from Krishna, deity worship makes a lot of sense then. I was talking to a Muslim person and he was saying, we don't believe in deity worship. So I was asking, you don't? Really? You don't? I said, if I take Quran and I throw it on the floor, what will happen? He said, you can't do that. It's an insult. I said, but you don't believe in deity worship. So why are you worshipping the book? I said, if I write Allah, right, and I sit on it, how will you feel? I'll feel very bad. You don't believe in deity worship? You don't believe in deity worship? Which direction do you point when you do your namaz? West. You don't believe in deity worship? You are doing all forms of deity worship. You're going to Hajj. 7 times you're circumambulating like pagan. It's a pagan ritual to circumambulate 7 times. We do it. We circumambulate the temple 7 times. Right? You don't do deity worship? Really? Really? You are worshipping the words. Okay, so here is the thing, right? If I write the name Allah, okay, that's okay. If I just turn the word a little bit here and put a dot and it looks like 2 eyes, that's deity. That's deity worship. That's terrible. So are you understanding the logic here? What a weird logic, right? If you take a pen and you make 2 eyes, dots, nose, mouth, peacock feathers, flute, that's deity worship. Oh, that's terrible. Blasphemy. Blasphemy. Oh, but with the same pen, if I write Allah, that's okay. That's not a problem. Just, that's okay. It's the same thing, isn't it? When you write, have you seen the way it's written? Such nice calligraphy, isn't it? Right? And so in the same way, this is painted. What's the difference? You see, this is the idea. When you start recognizing these things, you're like, everyone's doing deity worship. Right? Christians, oh, you're doing deity worship, and everyone's got a cross. Everyone's roaming around with a cross. Oh, you should not do deity worship. A nice, beautiful cross kept here. Yeah, sure, mate. Sure. I'll just give me 1 minute. Yes, I will 100% come. And then another time you will see, I was talking to a Jew, and again in university you get to meet a lot of people. He was saying, we're not into deity worship. I was asking, what's that cap behind you? Why are you wearing the cap behind you? For what reason? For what purpose? Everyone's doing deity worship. Everybody. You take money, right? And there's a picture on the money. Why? Deity worship. My 10 cents. That same silver coin, right? If someone scribbled out the 10, oh, worthless. Couldn't do anything with it. You're not doing deity worship? Everyone's doing deity worship. Instagram, there are influencers. They are making money on deity worship. So this idea has to be understood. Everyone's doing deity worship because the original position of the soul, Jiver Swarup Hoye, Jiva's Swarup, original form, Krishnera Nityadas, to be a servant of Krishna. Prabhu, you had something to say. Could you be a bit louder, please?
Is it because Hinduism worships deities, not deity? Is that why there's a...
Okay. So, how many words are there in Quran? Is it Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? Not just Prophet Muhammad. It's Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. That's how they describe it. You have a problem with deities? You have no problem with anything. You have a figmentous imagination that has brought up, and you believe, oh, this is okay, this is not okay, but you have no idea about what is Shastra. Shastra actually says there may be many deities. Do you have kids? Do you have kids? Little kids? Yes. Right? You don't do deity worship. Every day you wake up in the morning, 2 o'clock, if the baby does, carrying, or cleaning, napping. How much abhishek do you do of the child? Every day, shower the baby, clean the baby, take care, whole night. You are not doing deity worship. Everyone's doing it. Now, yes, your point is one God versus multiple gods, right? I think that is where you were leaning to. One God versus multiple gods. And believe this or not, in practically every religion, nobody knows who God is. No one. Srila Prabhupada writes a beautiful purport. Everyone knows God is great. Allahu Akbar. Everyone knows God is great. How great is He? That nobody knows. When you say God is great, what are you thinking? Give me your wildest imagination of greatness of God. Wildest imagination. Correct. That's it? What about the empty space? Everything? What about you? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, who knows? Correct? So, we don't know the greatness of God. And actually, to decide the greatness of God, you have to first deal with Him. Right? Whenever let's say you have someone you like, Steve Jobs. I think Steve Jobs was a very intelligent person. Or you like Donald Trump. 2 ranges. I'm giving 2 ranges. I'm not saying somebody may like this, somebody may like that, right? Whatever range, Barack Obama, whatever. Okay, whatever you like, right? When you think this person is great, what is the immediate thing you look for in YouTube? The person's interview. Why? So you get to know the person, isn't it? Isn't that your natural inclination? Where does that natural inclination come from? From there. Krishnera Nityadas. Original. That we want to deal with Krishna, so we want to know Krishna. So the deity worship or the process of deity worship is to get to know Krishna. And that is why this is encouraged. Now, this being the 50th anniversary of Radha Gopinath, we are encouraging everyone to participate in deity worship. And again, you all may say, but I'm not a Brahmana. Right? He's sitting here as a Brahmana. Right? So he can engage. He's actually a Brahmana. So, but I'm not a Brahmana. We may not be Brahmana. How do we engage in deity worship? That is the amazing part about deity worship. That you can enable the process. And if you are an enabler, you are part of the process. You see, that's the beauty. So, if you bring flowers, like you can see devotees here, they have brought mandarins, apples, bananas, milk. They are bringing, and guess what they are used for? They are used for deity worship. So they are participating in the process of deity worship. And that is the amazing thing. Right? And so once we understand this construct of I am dependent. Who am I? I am dependent. What am I dependent on? Right? Initially, I am dependent on the material world. Great. Good realization. No one's saying it's a bad realization. It's a good realization. But then slowly you start going beyond the Pancha Mahabhutas, like beyond the material world, and you start realizing that actually I'm dependent on Krishna. And in that process of understanding dependence, we decide that we should do deity worship. We should be engaged in deity worship. I'm sure some of you have small deities in your house. Small that you take care of. Right? And here, good one. And here you have what we call as Challah Deities. Challah means they do not move. Of course, our Gopinath has moved many times. So that is why he's Achintya Bheda Bhed. And one moment Abhed, Challah, and then Bheda. No, it'll move. So it's Challah Deity meaning they are established. Right? And they function. And then you will see below, you will see Chota Radha Gopinath. I don't know if you can see the small deities in the bottom. They are called Utsava Deities. Utsava means whenever there's a festival. We had a beautiful festival, Pushpa Abhishek, and we had, Jhulan Yatra. And we take these deities and then we do a lot of, wonderful service. So they are Utsava Deities. And then the deities you have at home, they are Bhava Deities. Bhava, depending on your mood. Sometimes you are angry. And then the mood, Krishna, I want to talk to you. Right, so they're angry. But then when you come to temple, you're angry. Here they're Achala. Here you have to do your service. Many times I get angry with Krishna. Krishna, I'm not going to talk to you today. But then you come to temple, you have to do your service. You have to engage in your service. And the reason you do that, what is the purpose of that? Is because here they're Achala. Means here they are established. And something interesting is when you establish deities, when they do Pran Pratishtha and all the, Nayana, opening the eyes of the deities, whenever they do that, right? There is a deal made between the pujari and the deity to say, my dear Krishna, please come and reside here in this wonderful deity form. I will give you 5 times prasadam, 8 puris, 2 gulab jamun. You make a full list. And then Krishna agrees, yes, I agree to this deal. And then he comes. Now, whatever is offered inside, it's called Mahaprasad. Why? Because now Krishna has to eat it. Are you understanding the difference? He has to eat it. Because he made the deal. He made the deal. And Krishna, he's truthful. Pratigya tava govinda name bhakta pranashyati. Iti samsmritya prana sandharayamiham. He says, Krishna, on your word, I am keeping my life breath. What an amazing shloka, right? Right, so and so that right now, Nanda Gokul Prabhu is offering, he's offering to Radha Gopinath. That offering, Gopinath has actually eaten. So that is why we become very, Mahaprasad. We are eager for Mahaprasad because it is actually tasted prasadam. Right, so we love it. Like it gives us great joy. And so this is the form of deity worship. Right, and you will see devotees here, they have been engaged in deity worship. You could almost say from time immemorial. Prabhu being one example of that. Right, Prabhu has been coming dedicated for, I think 30 years now, or maybe more actually. Right, for a long period of time. It almost feels like, eternal. It feels eternal. Right, so there are devotees here who have been doing deity worship for a very long time. And so the idea of encouragement in doing deity worship is, we will remember our eternal form. We will remember that we are Krishna's Nitya Das. We have to remind ourselves, right? Especially, when you go to office nowadays, it's performance season, right? End of year is coming. Everyone will be doing performance reviews in office. I'm sure all of you are doing. I also have to do. Now I remember. So you're doing your performance reviews, and then you get your bonus, and you think, I did well. I did very well. But then you have to come here in front of Krishna and say, no, actually, Krishna, I am Das. Because otherwise, we forget that we are Dasas. We forget, right? And so the idea of this process, right? Remember that I am Das. Remember that I am dependent on Krishna. And therefore, I should know how to engage with Krishna. Right? Sometimes you hear people say devotees are above rules and regulations. Sometimes it is taken as there are no rules and regulations. That's not what it means. It means when you are above rules and regulations, you are interested in Gopinath, and therefore you will follow all the rules and regulations. Because he likes it. Not because I am following rules and regulations, then I'll get Gopinath. No, I want Gopinath. Oh, I will follow the rules and regulations. Right? So that's the process. So Nanda Maharaj Prabhu is ready. He's ready. Devotees are ready to do arati. So I encourage all of you to please come and engage in this devotional service of Radha Gopinath. And believe me or not, you will come to know your eternal position and how you eternally deal with Krishna. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande.
Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Shri